We live in a world where our minds are constantly racing, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts that seem to have no end. Overthinking is not merely an inconvenience, it is a trap, a cycle that isolates us from the richness of life itself. It is a thief of time, energy, and clarity, leaving us paralyzed in indecision and consumed by anxiety. But what if I told you that the solution to overthinking does not lie in fighting the thoughts? What if the answer is not to suppress, distract, or even escape from your mind, but rather to transform the way you engage with it? Descartes famously declared, "I think, therefore I am." He elevated thinking as the cornerstone of our existence, but what he also revealed was the immense power of thought and its capacity to liberate or imprison us. Overthinking, then, is not a question of thinking too much, but of thinking in a way that serves no purpose. It is thought divorced from action, from clarity, from truth. It is thought of as running wild, untamed, and unexamined, and so the path to freedom begins with a simple but profound realization: you are not your thoughts. Ask yourself this: if you are not your thoughts, then who or what are you? Your thoughts arise, persist, and fade, yet something remains constant. Something is observed. Something to watch. That something is you. And when you shift your identity away from your thoughts, you begin to reclaim control over them rather than letting them control you. Let's start with this: why do we overthink? At its core, overthinking is a survival mechanism. It is your mind's attempt to anticipate danger, solve problems, and prepare for every possible outcome. It feels productive, as though by cycling through every scenario, you are gaining control over uncertainty. But here's the truth: overthinking does not solve uncertainty. It magnifies it. The more you analyze, the more doubts you create.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The more you rehearse conversations, replay events, or predict outcomes, the further you drift from what is real and present. Overthinking is your mind's way of avoiding discomfort, but in doing so, it creates a far deeper discomfort, the discomfort of disconnection, of being stuck in a reality that exists only in your head. Now, let's bring Descartes into the heart of this conversation. Descartes believed in radical doubt, that to arrive at truth, we must first doubt everything we think we know. For the overthinker, this might sound like a nightmare. Doubt is already their constant companion. But Descartes was not advocating for endless doubt. He was pointing us toward clarity, toward stripping away illusion. Overthinking is a form of illusion. It is the mind spinning stories, projecting fears, and building castles of what-ifs. The only way to stop it is to confront it. To ask, is this thought true? Is this thought useful? Is this thought even mine? Or is it a fragment of someone else's opinion, expectation, or judgment that I have internalized? Here's where things get practical. First, you must learn to interrupt the cycle of overthinking. Imagine your thoughts as clouds passing in the sky. You are not the clouds, you are the sky. The clouds may come and go, but the sky remains unchanged. When a thought arises, instead of chasing it, observe it, label it. Say to yourself, this is a thought about failure, or this is a thought about rejection. By naming the thought, you create distance from it. You are no longer consumed by the thought, you are watching it. This simple act of naming is powerful because it reminds you that you are the observer, not the thinker. But observation is not enough. To truly stop overthinking, you must go deeper. You must investigate the root of your thoughts. What are you afraid of? What are you trying to control? Overthinking thrives on fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. But here's the paradox: the more you try to control life through overthinking, the less control you actually have. Life is not meant to be controlled, it is meant to be lived. And so the antidote to overthinking is not control but trust. Trust in yourself. Trust in your ability to handle uncertainty. Trust that answers will come not through endless analysis but through action. Think about this: how many times have you overthought a decision only to realize later that the answer was obvious all along? Overthinking blinds you to your own intuition, your own wisdom. It makes you second-guess what you already know. Descartes believed that clarity comes through reason, but reason is not the same as rumination. Reason is deliberate, focused, and purposeful. Rumination is chaotic, scattered, and repetitive. If you want to stop overthinking, you must learn to think clearly. And clear thinking begins with asking the right questions. Here's a question that can cut through the noise of overthinking: what is the next right action? Not the perfect action, not the action that guarantees success, but the next small, simple step you can take right now. Overthinking thrives on complexity. It crumbles in the face of simplicity. When you focus on the next right action, you shift from thinking to doing. And in doing, you break the cycle of overthinking. Another powerful tool is to anchor yourself in the present moment. Overthinking pulls you into the past or the future, rehashing what has already happened or worrying about what might happen. But the only place life exists is here and now. Descartes might argue that the present moment is where the mind meets reality. It is the point of contact between thought and experience. To return to the present, focus on your senses. What can you see, hear, feel, smell, or taste right now? Engage with the world around you. Overthinking cannot survive in the presence of your full attention. And now, a deeply challenging question for you: what would your life look like if you stopped overthinking? Imagine the mental space you would reclaim, the energy you would gain, the clarity you would have. What could you create, accomplish, or experience if your mind were not consumed by endless loops of thought? This is not a theoretical question. It is an invitation to step into a new way of being. But before we continue, remember this: overthinking is not something you can simply fix overnight. It is a habit, and like any habit, it takes time and practice to change. Be patient with yourself. Be curious about your thoughts. And most importantly, be willing to let go of the need for certainty. Life is uncertain, and that is what makes it beautiful. Overthinking is an attempt to resist this truth, but resistance only creates suffering. Acceptance, on the other hand, sets you free. We are creatures of habit, and one of the strongest habits we cling to is the illusion of control. Overthinking is born from this illusion. It is the mind's desperate attempt to create certainty in an uncertain world. But ask yourself this: has overthinking ever truly given you control? Has it ever brought you peace? Or has it only deepened your anxiety, delayed your decisions, and stolen time you'll never get back? The truth is, overthinking does not give us control, it gives us the illusion of control. And illusions, by their very nature, cannot sustain us. They may comfort us momentarily, but they crumble under the weight of reality. The more we overthink, the more we reinforce the belief that we can think our way to certainty, when in fact, certainty is not something we can acquire. It is something we must surrender, but surrender does not mean giving up. It means letting go of the need to know everything, predict everything, and control everything. Descartes' philosophy reminds us that doubt is not the enemy, doubt is a tool. It is what allows us to question our assumptions, challenge our beliefs, and strip away what is false. Overthinking, on the other hand, clings to doubt in a way that is destructive. It amplifies doubt without seeking resolution. It circles endlessly around what if and why, never arriving at what now. So the question becomes: how do we break free from this cycle? How do we move from overthinking to clarity, from paralysis to action? First, we must address the root of our overthinking fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of making the wrong choice. These fears are valid, but they are not truths. They are possibilities, and the mind treats possibilities as if they are certainties. Overthinking is the mind's way of saying, if I think about this long enough, I can avoid pain, but pain is not something we can outthink. Pain is a part of life, and trying to avoid it only magnifies it. Here's a hard truth: you will make mistakes. You will face rejection. You will encounter failure. And yet, you will survive. Think about the worst decisions you've made in your life, the ones that still make you cringe. Did you survive them? Did you learn from them? Did they shape you into the person you are today? If the answer is yes, then what are you so afraid of? The very thing you are trying to avoid is often the thing that will teach you the most. Here's an exercise you can try right now. Take one of your recurring overthinking patterns: an unresolved decision, a worry about the future, or a regret from the past. Write it down. Be specific. Then ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What is the worst case scenario? Write that down too. Now look at what you've written. Is the worst case scenario truly as catastrophic as your mind has made it out to be? Can you see how overthinking inflates the fear, making it seem larger than it is? Now let's take this a step further. Ask yourself, what is the best case scenario? What is the most realistic scenario? Write those down as well. By doing this, you are shifting from emotional thinking to rational thinking. You are training your mind to focus on facts rather than fears. This is what Descartes meant when he spoke of reason as the path to clarity. Reason does not eliminate fear, but it puts fear in its proper place. But even reason has its limits. There is something deeper, something more profound that can free us from overthinking trust. Trust is not blind faith. It is not a naive belief that everything will always work out perfectly. Trust is the recognition that life is unpredictable, and that's okay. Trust is the willingness to act even in the face of uncertainty. It is the courage to move forward without all the answers. Think about this: when was the last time you trusted yourself? Truly trusted yourself, not just your abilities, but your instincts, your values, your inner knowing? Overthinking often arises because we do not trust ourselves. We seek validation from others, or we try to predict how others will react because we are afraid of making the wrong choice. But the truth is, there is no such thing as a wrong choice. There are only choices, and each choice teaches us something. Here's another challenging question for you. What would happen if you trusted yourself completely? If you stopped seeking permission, stopped second-guessing, and stopped apologizing for who you are, what kind of life would you create? Now let's get practical again. One of the most effective ways to stop overthinking is to set boundaries with your mind. Just as you would set boundaries in a relationship, you must set boundaries with your thoughts. Start by giving yourself a specific amount of time to think about a problem, let's say 15 minutes. Set a timer. During that time, allow yourself to think about the problem as much as you want. Write down your thoughts if it helps. But when the timer goes off, stop. Shift your focus to something else. Go for a walk, call a friend, or work on a task. By setting a boundary, you are training your mind to stay within limits rather than spiraling out of control. Another technique is to practice gratitude. Overthinking often stems from a place of lack of certainty, lack of control, lack of confidence. Gratitude shifts your focus from lack to abundance. It reminds you of what is already good, already working, already enough. Each day, take a moment to write down 3 things you are grateful for. They don't have to be big things. It could be something as simple as a warm cup of coffee, a kind word from a stranger, or the feeling of sunlight on your skin. Gratitude anchors you in the present moment, where overthinking cannot survive. And finally, let's talk about action. Overthinking thrives on inaction. The longer you stay in your head, the stronger the cycle becomes. The only way to break the cycle is to act. Action does not have to be perfect or even successful. It just has to be intentional. When you take action, you shift from thinking to doing, from fear to courage, from doubt to trust. So ask yourself, what is one small, imperfect action you can take today? Not tomorrow, not next week, but today. It doesn't have to be monumental. It could be as simple as sending an email, making a phone call, or taking a step toward a goal you've been putting off. Whatever it is, do it. And when you do, notice how your mind begins to quiet. Notice how the act of doing dissolves the need for overthinking. Do you see the pattern here? Overthinking is not something you can fix by thinking about it more. It is something you outgrow by trusting yourself, taking action, and staying present. It is a habit, not an identity. And like any habit, it can be changed. You've probably heard the phrase, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." But for overthinkers, perfection isn't just an enemy, it's the warden of the mental prison we lock ourselves in. Overthinking thrives in the shadow of perfection. It whispers to us that if we just think a little harder, analyze a little longer, or prepare a little more, we can avoid mistakes, rejection, or failure. It convinces us that we can find the perfect solution, say the perfect thing, or make the perfect decision. But perfection does not exist. It is an impossible standard, and chasing it is like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you run, it will always stay out of reach. So why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we hold ourselves to a standard that no human being can meet? The answer lies in fear. The demand for perfection is rooted in the fear of being judged, the fear of being vulnerable, and ultimately the fear of not being enough. Overthinking is our attempt to shield ourselves from these fears. If we're perfect, we reason we'll be safe. No one will criticize us. No one will reject us. No one will see our flaws. But this is a lie. Perfection doesn't protect us, it isolates us. It keeps us trapped in our heads, disconnected from others, and disconnected from life itself. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you allowed yourself to be imperfect? When was the last time you said or did something without overanalyzing it afterward? Can you even remember? Overthinking makes perfectionism a way of life, and in doing so, it robs us of authenticity. It robs us of the freedom to be ourselves. Here's a truth that may be hard to accept. You don't need to be perfect to be loved, respected, or successful. In fact, it's your imperfections that make you human, relatable, and real. Think about the people you admire most in life. Are they perfect, or do you admire them because of their courage, their resilience, their authenticity? Perfection does not inspire us, humanity does. And yet, we hold ourselves to a standard we wouldn't dream of imposing on anyone else. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is this: you are not defined by your mistakes. You are not defined by other people's opinions. You are not defined by the outcomes of your decisions. You are defined by how you show up in life, by your willingness to try, to learn, and to grow. Overthinking keeps you stuck because it makes you believe that your worth is tied to getting everything right. But life is not about getting things right. It's about living fully, even when things go wrong. Here's a practical way to release yourself from the grip of perfectionism. Embrace the idea of good enough. When you catch yourself overthinking a decision or situation, ask yourself, what would good enough look like right now? Not perfect, not flawless, just good enough. This simple question can shift your perspective and help you take action without getting bogged down in endless analysis. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're writing an email for work, and you've spent the last 30 minutes rewriting the same sentence over and over. You're agonizing over every word, trying to make it perfect. But what if you paused and asked yourself, is this good enough? Chances are, it is. The extra time and mental energy you're spending on that one sentence aren't making a meaningful difference, they're just feeding your overthinking habit. By accepting good enough, you free yourself to move on to what really matters. But good enough isn't just about productivity. It's also about self-compassion. Overthinking is often driven by an inner critic that tells us we're not good enough, smart enough, or capable enough. This critic thrives on perfectionism, and it uses overthinking as a weapon to keep us in a state of self-doubt. To silence this critic, you must replace it with a kinder, more supportive voice. Here's how: the next time you catch yourself overthinking, pause and ask, would I speak to a friend this way? Imagine your best friend came to you, struggling with the same thoughts you're having. What would you say to them? Would you tell them they're not good enough? Would you tell them they need to be perfect? Or would you reassure them, encourage them, and remind them of their strengths? Now, say those same words to yourself. This practice may feel strange or even uncomfortable at first, but it's one of the most powerful ways to break free from overthinking. Let's take this further. Perfectionism often extends beyond ourselves to the way we view life as a whole. We expect life to unfold in a certain way, and when it doesn't, we overthink. We replay events, wondering what we could have done differently. We obsess over what-if scenarios, imagining how things might have turned out if only we had been smarter, faster, or better. But life is not a puzzle to be solved or a problem to be perfected. Life is a process, and it is inherently unpredictable. Descartes reminds us that doubt is an essential part of understanding. In the same way, uncertainty is an essential part of life. Overthinking is often an attempt to eliminate uncertainty, but this is a futile endeavor. The more we resist uncertainty, the more anxious and overwhelmed we become. The only way forward is to embrace it. So let me ask you this: what would your life look like if you stopped trying to control everything? What would it feel like to trust that things will unfold as they're meant to, even if you don't have all the answers right now? Here's a practice that can help focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. Overthinking often arises when we try to control things that are beyond our power: other people's opinions, the outcome of a decision, or the future itself. But the truth is, the only things you can control are your actions, your attitudes, and your responses. When you focus on these, you reclaim your power. You stop wasting energy on things you can't change and start directing it toward what truly matters. For example, if you're overthinking a conversation, ask yourself, what can I control here? You can't control how the other person will react, but you can control how you express yourself. You can control your tone, your words, and your intention. By focusing on what you can control, you shift from a state of anxiety to a state of empowerment. And finally, let's talk about failure. Overthinking often stems from a fear of failure, but failure is not the end, it is the beginning. Every failure is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. The most successful people in the world are not those who avoid failure, they are those who embrace it. They understand that failure is not a reflection of their worth, but a stepping stone on the path to success. So here's a challenge for you: the next time you face a decision, instead of asking, what if I fail, ask, what if I succeed? Shift your focus from fear to possibility. And remember, even if you fail, you will survive. You will learn, and you will move forward. There's still more to uncover, more truths to explore, and more practical tools to share. But for now, reflect on this: perfectionism is not the answer to overthinking, it is the cause of it. And the only way to stop overthinking is to let go of perfection and embrace the messiness of life.